I'm David Cunliffe here with Rampage TV, and I'm here with Lou Vairo, a U.S. Hockey Hall of Famer and just overall hockey legend. So, Lou, basically, when did you become a fan of hockey, or what's your first hockey memory?
First hockey memory was I caught a glimpse of a New York Ranger game on an old black and white TV. They didn't televise many games, and I liked it. It looked like a lot of action. We had no ice rinks in Brooklyn where I grew up, and we played basketball, football in the autumn, basketball year-round, baseball, softball, and stickball, and games like that in the summer. We played outside all the time.
Yeah.
Kids did.
Just running around.
Yeah, and you didn't need much money or expensive equipment. You just played, and that's how you spent your days in the summer, and in the winter you went to school and you played in school.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun, and you had lots of friends and buddies, and basically grew up most of my adolescence, childhood in a housing project. So there were 10 families on each floor, 8 floors in each building, and 30 buildings. So there were plenty of kids.
No shortage.
Yeah, and it was a wonderful for a young kid to be able to have that. And we made our own facilities that we didn't have. We didn't have coaches. We didn't have referees, linesmen, umpires, and stuff. We played, and we learned to be fair and honorable that way. We didn't cheat.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes somebody could try it, but they'd get straightened out, and you learn to be honorable, and I think that's important. Also, leaders develop from this type of play.
Yeah, just playing around.
And parents were no issue.
Yeah.
Fathers worked and mothers worked hard raising kids, cooking, cleaning the house, doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, so you talk about that there wasn't really rinks and whatnot in Brooklyn, and you're instrumental in starting a bunch of programs around New York. Who did you work through, or who did you?
Well, what happened was I didn't know about roller hockey, but I got a bunch of kids in the neighborhood because we all liked hockey whenever we could watch it, and we found out you could buy skates. They were very, very. I think they were $15 a pair, which was very expensive then. I'm talking. It was 60 years ago.
Yeah.
And we bought, they called them Old Chicago. They were black, and they were boots, and they had the wheels, steel wheels, already assembled on them.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So they were neat. And then we learned how to roller skate, and bought, I remember my first hockey stick. It was short, it was a heavy stick, wood, and it was 50 cents.
Wow.
So you could afford that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, and we didn't have a puck. And my uncle, he had a garage and a little shop, and I had some relatives. They were shoemakers, barbers, shoemakers, butchers, jobs like that. My uncle got some heels, old heels of shoes, and he rounded them off. He rounded them on a wheel, a grinding wheel, but they were too hard. They hurt if it hit you. We did not have shin pads and that. We knew we could buy them at Jerry Cosby's or Paragon, but that was in New York, in Manhattan, and it was very expensive. So we used magazines and cardboard and stuff like that under our pants.
Well, that's because I grew up watching the Mighty Ducks, and they weren't joking. They used newspapers.
Oh, did they really?
So,
Yeah, I didn't know
that.
that.
The kids couldn't afford gear, so they had newspapers on their.
Yeah, they were. We used Life magazine.
That's tremendous.
One on each foot was more than enough. Wrap it around, and tape was expensive, so my father came up with a good idea. He went over to the gas station and got old inner tubes, and he cut them across into big rubber bands.
Oh, that's perfect.
And he said, don't make them too tight. I'd have your leg amputated. And we put them on, and we used construction workers' gloves. We didn't wear helmets, face masks, mouth guard. We didn't even know they existed.
Yeah.
All that stuff. And we played hockey. every day. And one day a guy pulled up in an old beat-up car, and he had a rope holding one door shut. And he pulled up, he saw us playing behind a supermarket. And on a rough asphalt, it was rough, broken bottles, it was rough. And he saw us and he pulled up, he said, "What are you kids doing?" And on the side of his car, he had painted A1 Pest Control. But he turned out to be the person who really introduced me to hockey. His name was Eddie Escanzi. Unfortunately, Eddie been gone for a while. And he said, "You kids, you ought to join this league. There's a league in Midwood, Brooklyn, in a schoolyard that's smooth and clean, and they're putting boards up, and they have real nets, and they have youth groups, and they have guys, adults like me that play."
Yeah.
And we didn't know where it was. He told us how to get there, so we had to take 2 buses, a subway, and skate about 4 blocks to get there. And there was only, with transfers, it was only 15 cents.
Wow.
To go and come, so.
That's perfect.
The bus drivers would look at us, we'd get on the bus with skates on and everything. "What the hell are you kids doing?" And we went there, he got us signed up in the league. I said, "How much is it gonna cost?" They said, "It's free." A guy named Mark Grillo was running it, who later turned out to be, like Eddie, one of my best lifelong friends. Bart was an air conditioning guy, had a little business, just a nice man. And lived near that neighborhood, and he wanted to help kids, and he liked playing himself. They were all Ranger fans, everybody was. And there's only 6 teams in the league, and I imagine this was in the 50s, probably 1955-ish. So anyway, that's how it got started, and they had a great puck, and then it hurt, but not that bad. It was a roll of white electrical tape. And we knew where to get, I bought them for the kids in the Rampage. We bought a few pucks at Ace Hardware, I bought them out. They only had 4. And I gave them to the kids because there's a rink in the park around here that they can play in. Has boards and everything. That would have been paradise to us.
Yeah.
But it goes, especially when the weather gets colder, it really slides good on asphalt. And that's basically how I had a passion for it, and it was fun. My brother Jerry was close in age. He got involved, and all the kids in the neighborhood got involved.
That's awesome. So how did you transfer from, the steel wheels, roller hockey to ice?
It was only steel wheels. We never knew about fiber. They didn't have that.
That's just how it was.
And then leagues came about, and there were other neighborhoods in Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island, Bronx. Young Richie Hansen, he started out, and he still holds the record for the most points in the history of the Central Pro Hockey League. Richie started out playing roller hockey in the Yankee Stadium, the old Yankee Stadium parking lot.
That's perfect.
He ended up in the NHL.
That's
Everything can be done,
Yeah.
Well, we had no ice rinks.
Yeah.
There was a rink called Sky Rink. It was on top of the old Madison Square Garden on 8th Avenue and West 49th Street, right in the heart of Hell's Kitchen.
On top of it.
And on top. But it had no boards. It was figure skating people.
That's crazy.
And, it wasn't very good. Then, years later, they built a rink on the 28th floor of a building that had boards. It was for figure skating. They called it, was in Manhattan on the west side in the 20s, though. Can't think of all the name of the neighborhood and everything. Oh, God. I hear it all the time. I've been there.
Yeah.
Can't think of it. But anyway, it was
They got creative with it.
Yeah, but then the city of New York in 1967, I believe, the World's Fair was over, and they had this building out in Flushing, Queens. where Shea Stadium was built.
Yeah.
Where they played tennis.
Yeah.
Did you ever see that metal globe? It's in that movie, some monster.
Right, yeah,
What is
Men
it?
in Black.
Men in Black.
Yes, now I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about. Okay.
and there's a building there, it was called the New York City Building. It was like more of a square than a rectangle, and it was painted inside black. And the ceiling was about 100 feet straight up, and the lights were 75 watt bulbs, about 1 million of them screwed in, half of them out, and they converted that into an ice rink. It was horrible. When I think back now, there was no Zamboni. Ice was done once a day. 4 guys would come out with a Jeep and a V-form thing with 2 blades. 3 guys would hold onto ropes to keep it down, and 1 driver would drive it. And then they'd hose it with a fire hose. The boards were concrete. They were about 8 feet high, concrete. There were no benches, just stairways down. They had public skating. I imagine they had figure skating. I can't remember precisely, but we started the Greater New York City Ice Hockey League, which still exists.
Wow.
50-something years later, 53 years later.
Incredible.
Hall of Famers were developed on that sheet of ice. So you don't need money and you don't need much to become a hockey player. You need commitment. And you have to really want to do it, and God willing, you have some talent.
Yeah.
And that became, now it's beautiful. It's all been, they had plexiglass, real boards, benches.
They built it all
Oh,
up.
it's beautiful now. I went back to see it a number of years ago. Bobby Crawford took me to see it. I was stunned. He said, "This is where it all started, Coach." He played in the NHL. He started there too. So then from there, the H Stark Center, which is in action in Brooklyn, right by the parachute jump on Coney Island. It's been a great rink. Lots of good players developed there. It's still going strong. Then they started building different private, and the rink in Riverdale, next to the Stelladoro cookie factory. I used to love to go there because you could smell the cookies baking.
While you were playing.
Yeah, it was great, wonderful.
Yeah.
And that was open on the sides. A guy named Bob Kelton owned it, had it built and owned it, but he eventually sold it. It became closed in, and it became a warehouse and stuff. But there's enough rinks in the New York area now.
So they just started turning it up, and it basically made ice hockey accessible.
It caught on. You know, a guy who died recently, in '92, I think he was, Emile Francis, was a former goalkeeper. He was born in North Battleford, Saskatchewan, and came down as a young guy to play pro hockey. And he made it to the NHL. Played with the Blackhawks. I can't remember who else. But he became eventually the vice president, general manager, and coach of a beleaguered New York Ranger franchise.
Oh.
And he really turned it around, built it up, did a great job. Should have won some cups. He was not lucky.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And then Bobby Orr came into the league, and nobody was lucky the way that guy could play. So anyway, Emil started the New York Med League, which is still in existence, doing very well. And he gave a great gift to the city of New York and to the country.
Absolutely.
He really looked out and thought that there's no reason the American kid couldn't succeed in hockey if given a chance.
Exactly.
His son, Bobby, played for him at the time as skates. Bobby made it to the NHL, and he also was a great coach until his back injury did him in. I think he has to operate in a wheelchair now. Bobby was great. He was a great coach, too. He was like his father, fierce competitor and a good human being. So you can see how players can be developed anywhere if they're committed.
Exactly. Yeah,
If
and
they have talent.
and just like the conversation, you were having before we set up everything, it was, you don't need, all these facilities and everything.
You don't need that much.
You can just go in your backyard.
That's right, and kids in this great program here, they get professional instruction from from Coach John and Justin and their crews in the gym and everything, workout room and all that. But my personal observation is not enough. Kids should work out 6 days a week minimum, morning and night. Doesn't have to do it 2 hours each time.
Yeah.
You can accomplish a lot if you do it properly in 15, 20 minutes.
Exactly.
But it has to be age specific for their needs.
Right.
And if they do it, the improvement will be slow, steady, and take a long time. But time passes. Like going on a diet, which I've been on every diet known to humanity. Christmas is going to come if I try to lose weight or not, right?
Right.
So if I try, maybe I'll be 10 pounds lighter by Christmas. So if you work out steady and steadfast manner, 2-3 years from now, you're going to be a little stronger, a little quicker,
Yeah.
you're a little more agile. If you do just 20 minutes in the morning and evening, 15 minutes even.
Yeah. And it also builds those habits that you need to.
Yeah, you get used to it. You get used to it, and it's like working out. People that join gyms for thousands of dollars and everything, they become addicted almost to it. It does pay off. They see results eventually, and then they don't want to go back. And
Right.
players will see, maybe I'll make this team as the 9th forward because I've done all this, and if I hadn't done it, I wouldn't even get an invite to the tryout probably. They'll catch on and they'll figure it out.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, yeah, another thing I wanted to ask you about is really your friendship with Anatoly Tarasov, because he himself has done so much for not only hockey but European hockey.
No, much more than that.
Yeah.
What you see on the ice today was his dream. The way the game is played, pretty much so today, was his blueprint. It's because of him. They had some very good coaches in the Soviet Union. People have to realize they went through a world war between the Nazis and Stalin. They lost over 30 million people.
Yeah.
30 million people.
It was,
A lot of men died.
yeah.
I mean, you don't see a lot of grandfathers. Now you're starting to in Russia, but it's because it's a new generation. They got older,
Yeah.
the war people.
Yeah.
Like me, I was
More
born
like-
right at the end of World War II, so, but those other grandfathers died.
Yeah.
And he was commissioned. He was a player and he was commissioned, he liked the game. He was at the right age at that time, early 20s, when the war ended, or maybe 19 or 18. And he was a sportsman, he played soccer. And in the winter they played bandy, which is soccer on ice.
Yeah, maybe hockey.
Yeah, it's on ice with a ball and a curved stick.
Yeah.
Smaller, short stick. And he told me he went to the Soviet Wings Club, Krylia Sovietov, Soviet Wings. And Stalin's, one of his sons, who was a general, was forming the club to begin soccer teams, basketball, every sport.
Like Olympic sport.
Yeah,
Olympic
all the
program.
sports. And he wanted to try what the Soviets called hockey with a puck. They called bandy hockey with a ball, and ice hockey that we know, hockey with a puck. Hockey Scheibe. Scheibe is a German word that means washer. You know a washer with the screw?
Yeah, one of the little
Round heel, yeah. So The Germans called the puck a scheibe because it resembled,
Yeah.
and the Russians stole it from them.
That makes sense.
And the word, yeah. And so he went, and it didn't work out the first few days. It's another story I won't get into now. But he left, and he went to Central Army team and became a player there. And then the coach didn't know anything about hockey with the puck or Canadian hockey, they would also call it, hockey or kanatski. And he got involved helping to coach the team he was playing on. And some of these guys were excellent athletes. Yeah, that was what they did.
Yeah, they're perfect.
They were like professionals. They loved it. And, but, not all of them. Some of them still had their jobs. I remember Ameltad, he was a grave digger. That's what he did.
Interesting.
Couldn't wait to retire from hockey and go back to the cemetery. He did great. He loved it.
It was
People, yeah. His friends were there.
and find your thing.
Yeah, people like
we need
different things. That's right. Well said.
We need people like that.
That's right. Well said. And then he liked it, and he wanted to go to Canada. He heard of the great Maurice Richard and that. And Canada would send over teams sometimes to play that were amateur teams. They didn't send Gordie Howe and those guys over.
Gotcha.
They sent amateurs. And they learned from them. Everything was a struggle. He told me they had no rinks, no indoor rinks. And
So it was pond hockey or nothing?
yeah, well, what he did was he was very clever. He went to Gorky Park and he convinced people. He was a very convincing guy. And they put up canvas tents. And the reason they did that was so the ice wouldn't melt when the sun came out. And they would flood the tennis courts
Okay.
when it got cold enough.
Yeah.
And that would help by putting those tents up.
They have ice year round.
At
least all winter, rather.
Yeah, but it was still melting. And so he told me, Lou, we would practice on tennis courts with 4, 5, 6 players at a time, maximum. We'd start about midnight. And if we were lucky, we could make it through to 8 in the morning. And the guys had to learn everything. But he said, I found out that the worse the conditions, and they don't quit, the more difficult the challenge, and to have to do things in a small area at high speed was the secret to developing skills. But you had to make the players work at high speed in these small congested areas, and you can definitely develop skills. They could all skate somewhat decently because of bandy, and they could get their full stride practice in once it got cold enough by playing, which we encouraged. And then we tried to play hockey with a puck on soccer fields that were frozen, and we did. But it was an absolute struggle. And this happened in 45, 46, 47.
Wow.
Here's what's amazing. In 1956, they won the World Championships and the gold medal at the Olympics in Cortina d'Ampezzo.
It's insane.
How did they do it? Right?
10, 11 years.
They didn't have good shoelaces, everything was knotted, they didn't have good equipment. I saw, even in 1970, I saw dressing rooms with dirt floors and rubber mats over them. I saw a shower, it was a pipe of ice cold water coming out of the ceiling, out of the wall, high up. The players carried their own bags. They didn't worry about sharpening skates. I did a kick the other day 12-year-old kid was fussing. I was watching the game. He needs his skates sharpened. I saw these guys walk across wood, concrete, broken glass, everything with their skates.
Just trash.
And you go on the ice and you can't get the puck from them.
Because once they get to proper ice out here,
Oh, they love it.
Yeah.
Now their kids are like our kids and kids around the world.
Yeah.
A little spoiled, I guess we could say.
But in the 50s.
Yeah, but they developed championship teams in those kind of conditions till they finally got an indoor rink, which was fabulous for them. They loved it.
Yeah.
Although Teresa told me many times, I miss good old days when players had their full heart into every minute of training.
Yeah.
And they also trained 8 hours a day, off ice, on ice. And I said, don't you think that's excessive? He said, we have to catch Canada. He told me this. He said they have a 60, 70-year head start on us.
Yeah.
We have to catch them. And why shouldn't a hockey player work an 8-hour day? Every other citizen of the Soviet Union does.
Yeah. They should be the best.
He said they got to work 8-hour day. And that's it, basically. And of course, his dream turned into reality, didn't it?
Oh, you really did. Yeah, so we got a couple more minutes. Do you have any story or anything that stands out or that, youngsters ought to hear?
Yeah, well, first I always felt hockey in the U.S. was fine. We had a great Olympic team as an example. USA Hockey didn't exist in 1960. It was AHAS, Amateur Hockey Association of the United States, and there was not one single paid employee.
Wow.
We won a gold medal.
Yeah.
We beat that Soviet team in Squaw Valley, California.
Yeah.
So we had good players, John Mayasich, oh my God, the Christian brothers, Billy Cleary, Jack McCartney. I don't want to leave anybody out. The whole team was great. I watched them. I was 15 at the time, and it really inspired me.
Yeah.
It really inspired me. I felt so proud of our guys. And Dick Meredith, I got to know all these guys. Meet them all and know them and become friendly with them, and they're great people. A lot of them are still alive.
Yeah.
They call it the Forgotten Team because of 1980.
Yeah.
But both should never be forgotten. They were both great teams.
Right.
And the message to the kids is ham and eggs. Fred Shearer, the great coach of the Philadelphia Flyers, and a great man, and people said his team played too dirty and all this kind of stuff, too much fighting. That wasn't who he was. That was a coincidence. The GM, Keith Allen, was building a team, the Philadelphia Flyers, and he was a very smart guy and a good guy. And he knew if he had a great goalkeeper, and he signed Bernie Parent from the Phantoms, I think their name was, from the World Hockey Association at that time, came in to try to challenge the NHL. And Keith knew he had a great goalie. And he had drafted some great young players like Reggie Leach and McLeish and Bobby Clark and that. I don't want to leave anybody, Andre DuPont, all these guys, Watson, Selesky, Eddie Van Ent. He built a very tough team. That's where they got that name, the Broadway Bullies or something. And they were tough, not fake tough, legitimate.
They owned it.
Battleship Kelly. And they were a tough group, and they won 2 Stanley Cups. When you have a goalie, a great goalie, and he plays great, you can win a Stanley Cup.
Absolutely.
It's proven how many times, yeah. And so anyway, Fred coached that team, but I got to know him really well. I got to room with him on a trip to Russia to a seminar. And he was a beauty, he was a piece of work. And we kept in touch as friends for years. In fact, when I was coaching in Holland, I had to leave. I had to go to coach when Italy asked for a number of reasons. And Fred had once told me whenever he gets out of the NHL, he'd love to go to Europe for a few years and just coach and live in a different environment. It'd be fun for him and his wife.
Yeah.
And they were mad at me in Tilburg, Holland. Oh, what are you leaving? We played our local kids and we had a great year. We want you to stay. And I said, I have to go for the following reasons, and I told them. But I said, I'll get a better coach to replace me. So I told them. They said, who? I said, how about Fred Shearer? Well, they all knew him.
Yeah.
They knew who he was. They said, what are you joking with? I said, no, I'll call him right now. You can call him.
Yeah.
We called him. We spoke to him, and Fred came to coach in Tilburg Holland for 1 year. It was fabulous. In fact, he and his wife came and visited me and my wife in Italy when I was coaching during the Christmas break.
Yeah.
They didn't go back to the States. They came down and spent a week with us in Val di Fassa, Italy, which was beautiful. And but ham and eggs, I said, give me good advice. And he thought, and he said, ham and eggs, and the way Fred was, he got up and he walked away. I said, Fred, what the hell does that mean? He said, ham and eggs, Lou. If you want to be great or really good at anything, and this is what the kids should remember, it's not good enough to be dedicated. You have to be committed. I said, what's the difference? I would think that's the same.
Yeah.
He said, no, there's a little difference. I said, what is it? He said, well, chicken will lay an egg, he's right, every day or at least 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Pig is committed.
One time.
And he walked away. And I thought about it, and that's what I tell the kids. You gotta put everything into it if you really want to be good.
Absolutely.
And why can't a kid be good from Monument, Colorado, as an example? If a kid can be good in places you can't even pronounce the names, in Siberia or in all over the world. Look at Slovakia, it's a beautiful little country surrounded by Ukraine. Who else? Hungary, Czech Republic. I don't know, Austria. It's right there in the middle of Europe. It's a small little country. It's very beautiful, great people. And they got the first, second, I think, draft picks this year. Where'd they come from? Right? They had to be committed kids.
Exactly.
And that's what our kids have to do. You can't be doing this, kids, all day or snoozing or not being committed. You gotta work hard and smart, and you have to do off-ice training. It will help you. Very good if you had parents that passed down great genes. That's gonna help you a lot. But there are players in every sport that didn't get great genes passed down, and they became great through commitment and hard work. Wonderful.